I'm sure many of you realize already that being a DC Comics or even a Marvel Comics fan is just very frustrating these days. Every once in a while, a creator will come along, a story will come along, and it feels like maybe, just maybe, some things are getting better within the comic book industry. Recently, I talked about how I thought Mark Waid's Batman Superman World's Finest was the most important comic book released in like the last 5 years. It's everything Marvel and DC should be embracing. People were starting to get excited about Lazarus Planet, Mark Waid's big event that kicked off this week. And what did DC Comics do? The very next day, they decide it's time to destroy any enthusiasm people might have built up in Mark Waid and Lazarus Planet. I'm not all that excited about it. I have event fatigue, but more than that, I also have LGBTQ plus fatigue. Wes, is that because you hate LGBTQ plus people? Absolutely not. But I have been inundated with stories featuring new LGBTQ characters over the last 5 years, and none of them have taken off. Nobody has ever put any type of care or thought into the characters. They just want to put out the characters so they can get a headline and hopefully sell a few comic books based on those headlines alone. They never actually try to tell a good story. People are excited about the new direction of DC Comics, potentially under Mark Waid. Now we're getting new trans heroes associated with Lazarus Planet coming out the next week. It's just enough is enough. How many trans characters can you introduce over the course of 24 months? I understand a lot of people think this is important or whatever, but you're talking to the wrong audience. You're actually selling comic books. That means you're talking to comic book readers for the most part, although obviously you do have some speculators and collectors in there that might be looking for first appearances of Circuit Breaker and some of these other LGBTQ plus characters. But for the most part, the people actually reading the comic books are just here for superhero fare, especially if they're reading DC and Marvel comics. Yet they keep stuffing these stories with this slice of life LGBTQ culture stuff that no one actually reading comic books could actually give a crap about. They want to see their favorite heroes doing superheroic stuff, but it does appear that Mark Waid is hot. He's got the event, so now we've got to start attaching all the things that have been failing DC Comics and Marvel Comics for the last 5 years onto this event, and let's kill any interest that may be generated by this. This is what I'm talking about. DC's Lazarus Planet Dark Fate #1 will introduce a new trans hero named Jules Jourdain, also known as Circuit Breaker, who holds a strong connection to the Still Force. Writer and artist A.L. Kaplan shared a first look at Circuit Breaker on Twitter, stating, "Meet Jules Jourdain, he, they, aka Circuit Breaker. Can a new hero channel the inexorable Still Force energy to fend off evil?" Debuting at DC's Lazarus Planet Dark Fate #1 out on Valentine's Day. Responding to a comment, Kaplan confirmed Jules is a trans man, but not super into the binary. Well, my goodness, as long as the character's not super into the binary, that must be really interesting stuff. And who is A.L. Kaplan? This is your big event for 2023. Why are you stuffing all of your failed creators and never will be's onto this event? People are coming for real comic book stories. No one cares about this stuff, and no one cares about the Still Force. It's like the most lame thing that's been introduced over the past 5 years at DC Comics outside of the freaking Omniverse. Scott Snyder trying to be Jeff Johns and introduce all these stupid forces because there's a Speed Force. There's got to be a force for every other thing in the entire DC universe, I guess. That's the logic as far as I can tell. And another thing, when you're talking to the wrong audience, stop using the pronoun stuff. Everybody, normal people, for the most part, hate the pronoun game. It's the most confusing thing in the world. Anytime you try to play the pronoun game, you end up sounding like an absolute moron. I don't even play it anymore. Want to know why? Not only is it not fun, I want to be courteous, but fuck! I don't like sounding like an absolute moron. Stop using the pronouns. Hey, listen, if you want to introduce cool LGBTQ plus characters, trans characters, think about it. Have a plan and do it right and actually stick with the character. Stop just throwing them out there willy-nilly just so you can get a headline because you think you're sending out the right message with the comic books. The right message with superhero comics are, did the hero save the day? Did he have to overcome something? Are we getting some character progression? No one cares about the sexuality or gender identity for the most part of any of these heroes. It's just not something comic book fans could care less about, and it never probably will be. Maybe in 50 years, by then, I'll be long gone, and most of you will be too. And thank God, because we won't have to put up with this crap anymore. Responding to Kaplan's post, DC editor Andrea Shea further touched on Circuit Breaker's upcoming debut, Circuit Breaker is going to be your new favorite character, she posted. Kaplan breathes life into Jules Jordain's first adventure this February, in which our new hero is blessed or cursed with the dreaded Still Force during Lazarus Planet Dark Fate. Don't miss his debut on 2/14. No, this is not going to be my new favorite character. None of these are going to be my new favorite character because they're all hollow. They're all just lame, not even cash grabs anymore. It's just a publicity grab. You can only go to the well so many times. No one cares about these characters anymore. Get some new ideas, DC Comics, and start realizing who's actually paying your salaries, who's actually paying for these comic books. Enough is enough. This just gets really boring after all. And tapping into the Still Force. DC's Still Force is a cosmic concept created by Scott Snyder and first appeared in 2018's Justice League #2, serving as a type of counter energy to the Speed Force. The Still Force can slow anything and everything in the universe down to a standstill. Villains such as the Turtle and Gorilla Grodd have attempted to cross the Still Force in order to defeat the Flash. You know what else the Still Force can slow down? My interest in comic books. I was reading Joshua Williamson's Flash run right there after we got through, what was it, Flash War or whatever. And all of a sudden, Barry Allen is just going on a tour of the DC universe, discovering all these stupid forces in there. It absolutely killed any interest that I had in the Flash whatsoever. I just put it down. I stopped reading it for months upon months because all this stuff is just boring. You know what was cool? When there was one force, the Speed Force. I understand Jeff Johns came out with a cool concept where there wasn't just a Green Lantern Corps. There's Yellow Lantern Corps, a Blue Lantern Corps, a Red Lantern Corps, an Orange Lantern Corps, Starfires, and all these things that really reinvigorated Green Lantern, changed the mythos and the way that we thought about Green Lanterns. That was a stroke of genius, and it was absolutely brilliant when it happened. But trying to recreate the magic of that by just doing knockoff versions, specifically with the Speed Force, and now there's the Slow Force, and now there's the kinetic force and all this. It's just the dumbest, lamest concept in the world. I like Scott Snyder. I think there for a while he was absolutely the best writer at DC Comics, but he's one of those guys you just gotta you gotta put a governor on him. You just can't let him run at full speed with all of his ideas because eventually he will make everything stupid. He will make everything redundant. He will go so far off the fucking reservation. He will make everything in your comic book universe not cool anymore. Example A in this video is the Still Force. Example B is the Batman Who Laughs. My goodness, could you oversaturate that character more? I wish Scott Snyder was still working at DC Comics, but in many ways, I'm fucking glad he is because we don't get stupid stuff like the Still Force. The only good saving grace about this is Circuit Breaker is associated with the Still Force. So it's not even a concept I'm even vaguely, remotely interested in to begin with. For those of you that are interested in reading Lazarus Planet Dark Fate #1, written by A.L. Kaplan, Tim Seeley, Josh Williamson, Dennis Culver, and Alyssa Wong, it will be out on February 14th, 2023. Although with a list of creators like that and Joshua Williamson finishing up on Dark Crisis, I don't see that there's going to be a lot of interest. You can try and get all the headlines that you want. You can say, hey, look, we've got new trans heroes. Wrong audience. If anything, less people will buy that comic now than we're planning on it. I imagine after this article that came up on CBR.com, people called up the comic book shop and said, you know what? Why don't we just take off Dark Fate from my pull list? And while we're at it, why don't we just take Lazarus Planet off my pull list altogether? I'll pay for the ones I ordered, but anything that has been ordered, just remove it from my pull list because I just don't care at this point. I am not the only person that has LGBTQ fatigue. I'm not the only person that has event fatigue at this point. DC Comics and Marvel Comics need to get their heads out of their asses and start listening to their audience. They need to start understanding their audience, actually what they want to read, instead of regurgitating and forcing this lame ass dribble down their throats every single month of the year. You cannot escape this stuff anymore. Last year, Marvel Comics tried to celebrate trans people during Pride Month, and they basically ended up roasting the entire culture. I did a whole video about it. It's embarrassing. DC and Marvel writers cannot do stories like this because none of them are serious and they don't know how to create good, solid characters. If you haven't seen this video, there's also a link in the video description.